Hey guys, welcome to another movie review. Today I'm going to be talking about an older film that's also based off of a rather old book. Not even so much an old book, I guess it's considered a classic novel. But this film came out in the early 70s. I want to say it came out in like 1972, I think is what it says on the of this DVD here. Um, this is based off the classic Philip Roth book, Portnoy's Complaint. So this is the film adaptation of that book, and this is the film I'm going to be reviewing for you today. So that's the cover of this if you're looking for it. I actually had to find this on Amazon. It is a little hard to find, but I heard things about it over the course of time, and I really just wanted to get around to seeing this film. As I'm reviewing it, you might notice why I kind of wanted to track it down, just because it just seems so absurd with the subject matter that they're taking on in this movie. But like I said, this film is based off of the classic Philip Roth book. It is considered a classic. I think it's on America's top 100 books of all time, or something really absurd like that, where it's really well liked by a lot of people. But in this movie, you guys, Portnoy's Complaint, it's about a young man who's growing up in a Jewish family. I think for throughout most of the runtime, he's finishing up high school, early college stages. So it's a rather young man, and let's just say he like I said, he lives in a Jewish family, and let's just say his private life isn't exactly something he's proud of. He does a lot of things where if his parents found out what he was doing, they probably wouldn't be very happy with him. He's very his sexual desires are very out there, and the way he kind of relieves the fact that he might not get a hold of something that quickly that he desires, he's willing to do really absurd, crazy things at the most absurd times of the day to feel satisfied with those desires. So throughout the movie, he's basically trying to figure out, what can I do to make myself happy, to, still love my family, still respect my parents, um, be a part of the Jewish community and, respect that faith while also kind of being myself. And, so these are all these things that he's trying to wonder and figure out throughout the course of this movie. Just basically keeping the life that he has while also kind of allowing his satisfaction with other things in a more appropriate sense that maybe his family would be more okay with. They want him to date a Jewish girl and things of this nature. um, so there's so many things he has to work around to make his parents happy and to make himself happy. And so throughout the course of this movie, he's seeing a therapist about all of this. It's mostly just him talking to the therapist. The therapist doesn't really do anything, which I am going to get to when I get to my positives and negatives, by the way. Um, so he's talking to this therapist, and as he's explaining all the problems he's facing and everything like that. He does get around to talking about this girl that he's dating, played by Karen Black, who calls herself the Monkey. And this is kind of around the time of his life where he really is kind of figuring out what his problems really are. Now that he has a girlfriend, now that he can um, be able to experience these, desires that he's been having over the course of his life and over his teenage years and so forth. He's kind of living it out now in a real relationship with a real girl, with somebody he's really pursuing a relationship with. And obviously, he's going to figure out the problems that he's having while this is happening. So Portnoy's Complaint is really about this young man figuring out what exactly is his problem, how can he go about them, how can he, be himself and pursue this life that he kind of wants, but he knows is kind of too absurd and too obscene for anybody to kind of accept, and while also kind of being this young man in this Jewish family that he's doing things that they're probably not going to be too happy with him doing. So Portnoy's Complaint is it's definitely a hard film to summarize into a small synopsis, as you might have just seen a second ago. But that kind of the movie is about, and that might scare some people away in the sense that it sounds like it's trying to do a little bit too much for a feature-length film and so forth. But like I said, this film is based off of a novel, and in the course of the novel, there's a lot of things you can get away with that you can't get away with in a movie. In the movie, you're much more constricted to how long the story can be and so forth. Um, but overall, I was pretty happy with Portnoy's Complaint. There's a lot of things about it that I really like and thought was really funny at times where it was trying to be funny and stuff like that. But I do have some negatives with it, so I am going to go over that as well for this review. So for my positives of Portnoy's Complaint, I do like how the film does show the importance of intimacy, love, and self-judgment. This film really does explore how important it is to be intimate, and when you love somebody, you have to be able to express it in a certain way, and to kind of know what it is, and to kind of be, not just make it all about yourself, but to really kind of realize what love is between two people, a man and a woman, or whatever have you. So I like how this film shows the importance and shows the balance, and also shows the balance too with self judgment. Is this young man realizing that a lot of the stuff he's doing in private is kind of not very acceptable. There's certainly more healthy, more appropriate ways of going about those desires. So I like how this film plays around with those things. It's a very intriguing film in that regard. I also like the musical score in this film, believe it or not. It's a very simplistic score. There's not a lot of songs to the score. They're kind of all the same song, but they're all done differently, and they're all done in a different pace and so forth. But I like this musical score that's applied to this movie. It's very catchy. It kind of stuck in my head while long after the film was done with. So I think that has something to say about the score. I think the musical score is very effective and useful in this movie. I also like how this film displays the comedy of a dirty-minded person. There's a lot of really funny moments in this movie. Definitely some things where this young man is either assisted or pursuing it by himself for his own desires. And it definitely plays out in a very funny way. There's even a scene where he's talking to a girl that he's slept with in bed, and he's kind of telling her about some dark secrets that he's had. So even that kind of stuff is played out in a very comedic way. So I like that aspect of the film too. And then my next positive point too is the actual character of Alexander Portnoy is very likable. He obviously does some things that make him not so likable in certain scenes, but I think the overall character is well developed. He learns stuff over the course of this movie. Just a very well written character, I felt. So whether that was brought to the book to the big screen in the right way, because I never personally read the book, but in the movie I feel like it works very well. I also like the lead relationship between I think his name. What's his name? The actor who plays Alexander Pointe, Richard Benjamin. Yes, Richard Benjamin and Karen Black. I think it's very investing and very worthwhile. I definitely felt something. I definitely felt like they were falling in love, and this was something that was really meaningful for the two of them. So I thought that aspect of the film was very effective as well. But for my negatives of Portnoy's complaint, there's a lot of dream sequence events or dream sequence scenes, I guess I should say, that just feel very unconvincing. They're trying to go for this effect that Alexander Portnoy is worried about something and his parents will find out about something really bad he's doing. Some of it's kind of cool, like they have like a first person view on some of them and so forth, but for the most part they're really unconvincing. I know what they're trying to do. It just feels like a fogged over effect kind of, and it doesn't really 100% work. It's kind of feels just cheesy all the way around, whether the acting or the way it's put together and so forth. So dream sequence wise, I wasn't too convinced with those in this movie. I thought they could have been done better. Another negative I have, and I guess that's not the fault of this film, it just happens to be, made in the early 70s. So obviously, the moving rating system, like, R, PG-13, and so forth, was much more strict back then, and directors weren't as free to put on certain material the way that they are now in film. But there is a lot of off screen sexual content, and to me personally, a lot of it just felt like it was off screen just because they weren't allowed to do it, or they could suggest it and kind of get the point across, but they couldn't do it too detailed. But for me personally, there was some scenes where it's just like there's a scene where Alexander has to go throw up in the bathroom and so forth like that. So there's stuff like that where you almost kind of wonder what exactly happened to make him do such a thing. But for me personally, it just felt like they had to go off screen just because the movie was made at a time where directors were more strict with what they could and couldn't do on film. So I thought that aspect just felt kind of lame. Just like, oh, well, we can't do it, so we'll just go off screen the whole time. And that was kind of lame in my opinion. And then going back to the therapist that I was bringing up earlier, for the most part, this therapist is just here in this movie just for narrative purposes. He's just kind of there to just sit in the chair to listen to Alex the whole time and give the film a reason for why Alex is explaining all these stories. I just didn't like how he felt like a narrative device, just a reason to exist as to how Alex can explain all these problems and experiences that he's had throughout the course of the story. It just felt like a really worthless character. I don't even think he even had any dialogue in this movie, to be honest. And then there's a scene towards the end that deals with Alexander being accused of something really bad. It's a really clunky, awfully filmed scene. It's just basically him in a dark room coming to a realization about something, I guess. Really poorly put together scene. It just kind of felt thrown in there just to kind of wrap up where the film couldn't wrap up from earlier in the story. I felt like it was a very lame way to kind of wrap up the story without them going into like a 2 hour runtime or so forth. So it just felt really clunky and not very well put together in that regard. But overall, I am going to give Portnoy's Complaint an 8.5 out of 10. There's a lot of things to really enjoy about it, but there's also a lot of things that really kind of don't work. I think this film being made at a different era, like let's say today, would have been more honorful for the book. I guess it would have definitely been more faithful to the book if it was made today. Who knows? We might get a remake eventually down the road, but as it exists today and as where this version of the film exists, I think there's things to like about it. There's just a lot of things about it that really could have been better. So overall, 8.5 out of 10 for me. I enjoyed this movie. It just could have used improvements at a lot of points in the story.